Good afternoon. I think it's important to kind of know who's speaking. You know, I'm that child that came from Flint. You know, I got in this business by accident. I was fast as a child, so I didn't get caught up in the system because I could outrun most of the guys that I was with. So the last guy always got caught. But you know, it's amazing about this business. I've had the chance to see justice in her court, and you learn things as you go. And this last 3 years, I've learned a lot about things. I came to this business, I was 6'4" with a big afro. I'm 6'3", and it wears you out. It wears you out. But I remember getting a call from her about one of our children. And you may take that lightly, but for a judge to be so concerned, it makes a difference. All of you have a responsibility to make a difference. You know, it's amazing. I tell people, everyone's a social worker because you deal with people. I don't care if you're building homes. Imagine all of us just being on the beach and we're a piece of sand. But the goal is to build a house. And that's what it starts from. That brick was just a lot of sand. So today you're coming together, and over the last 3 years we've added things to this sand to make it a brick. But then we're still not finished because we've got a house to build. And these recommendations are part of that. I went to a lot of diversity trainings because somehow that became the thing. Diversity, it is, and I got tired of hearing about me. And one time I went to a training and it was called The Healing of Racism. And people don't like to talk about that, but the presenter talked about it as though, the first time I really heard it, that it's a disease that each one of us are affected by. Now think about that. And the person that can cure you is you. There's no doctor for it. So as I learned from this group over the last 3 years, I started hearing things differently. When they were in the neighborhood, which I grew up, and they would always find the guy with the baseball hat and the 2 teeth, and he would talk about crime in the neighborhood, and they would say, this crime-infested neighborhood. I never thought about what children heard. Or they said, this is an unusual incident in this quiet, well-kept neighborhood. Those messages resonate with children. And so as this process has happened, we changed the way we do business at the orchards. Stop giving annual raises and start rewarding staff off success of children. How many kids did you have graduate? Do you know what your child wants to be? So if you come in the 3rd grade, what does that child want to be? And I always had the rule of 3. And that means the 3rd thing they want to be is what we can help you do. Because typically, football, pro football, rapper, 3rd thing was teacher. Even if the first 2 were things that we could have, we always did the 3rd thing as a goal. And we started putting that child around people that had that ability to make that happen. And in cities like Detroit and Flint, we've had 94% of our kids graduate. So we took them from this despair, because I always share that our children are stronger than us. Can you imagine being 8 years old and not know where you're going to sleep? I remember running away from home, got to the corner, got hungry, and went back home. Well, they come into us. You don't see them when they enter into this system. And Protective Services has said the people that love you the most hurt you the most. We don't think about that. So I made sure I introduced myself to the young ladies, because sometimes they stand in the corner. But before you leave, touch them and know that your touch helps to build the house that they have to stay in. And so these recommendations, and I'm not going to read them to you. That's not my style. You're smart, I hope. And you can read it. If you can't, ask the person next to you to read them to you. I want to share the story because I've learned so much. You know, when I came to this place called the Orchards, I worked for 20 years in residential treatment. and the name of the place is not important. And the children would say, I wish someone had done this before I got here. For 19 years, I didn't know what they were talking about. I'm like, you're here now, let's deal with it. But that led me to understand that there's a system. And I always tell our children, you are part of it. Each one of you are part of a system. So for us to say the kids are in the system, so are we. When you get in your car, there's a system. Children will ask you the most amazing things if you listen to them. My daughter asked me, Dad, if you can only go 70, why do you make cars go 100? I mean, think about the answer to that. You could eliminate speeding. But the question that asked me and that hurt me the most was when she was 8. And she said, after watching television, and I'm not a big television person, thank God for sports. She asked me, is there gonna be any men for me to marry? Because the men that looked like me, all she saw that was incarcerated or that they were in trouble. And so I really started to change the way I do business. I have a youth group, 30 kids. These kids are from the most affluent families to the most impoverished. And they serve as advisors. Before I make any decisions programmatically, I ask them, does this make sense? How many times do we ask children about our programs? Because we already know what's best for them. This group didn't take that approach. We argued, we disagreed, we laughed, we got challenged legislatively, politically, practice, and we came up with a plan. But a plan is no good. So if you talk to my grandmother, she won't have the recipe for that sweet potato pie. And if I follow the recipe for that sweet potato pie, it tastes different. But it's still sweet potato pie. So we can't get into the taste of it as much as what's the goal. These recommendations are the recipe. And then you have to take grandmama's, add a little bit of this, add a little bit of that. Because isn't the ultimate goal that the courts, the silos that we had as private agencies, I'm not trying to be better than the other private agencies. It's never been my goal. I'm trying to be the best organization I can be for the children I serve. And see, serving has lost its perspective. So it's not a slave thing to serve. When you go into certain communities and you think that you're going to rescue kids, it's a lot different than when you go into a community and say, I'm going to help children. So when you take a child out the water, if you're going to rescue them, you just take them out the water and leave them on the beach. And you think you did your job. But when you help them, you bring them out. You make sure they're okay. You make sure that they know where they're going. You make sure that they're, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to help. No, we're helping. Because try, you can't measure it. And I'd like to thank this committee for giving me an opportunity. In Saginaw, thank you. Because you open yourself up. And I'm from Flint, and I know what Saginaw is like. But to open yourself up, to say, we're going to take the ugly part of our county, because we all brag about what's good, right? Saginaw County said, no, we're going to have the courage to change. And most of us don't have that today. Most of us just want to come in, look nice and other, but it's ugly. What our kids see is ugly. When you say stand your ground, how many of you talked to the kids and said, tell me a little bit about Trayvon? I had my staff, we talked about it, and some staff, I'd never even heard of it. But every child had heard of it. And they had attitudes about it. And I made sure that my gangster type kids got with my other kids, because my gangster think they're going to go out and make justice. So it becomes an opportunity to do everything. And so stand your ground means something different if we explain it, because you can't explain that kind of tragedy. You can't explain why I turn my music up too loud and you can justify shooting my child. So we have to continue to look at the ugly part of our society and make it better. And as Mayor said, when they changed that rule from 18 to 21, you don't age out of the orchards. Age out is a funding kind of thing. It's kind of like you age out your house, but you still call mom and dad. So we make sure that number is available. So I got 34-year-old kids, 35-year-old, because sometimes it takes that long to get the message. So as you're looking at these recommendations, at the oversight, and you're absolutely right, data is everything, but it's not the only thing. Data with no commitment, intelligence without a commitment to change doesn't do anything. This leadership of this state, we're going to continue to push them, and they should push us, because we deal with the most precious resource, and that's our children. And if one of you, no matter what you do, whether you're in the media, if you don't take the chance to look at what's good here, children will follow the story you tell them. And that's why the drug world works. Because when you're 13, and if you call that number, you might not see your 8-year-old, 7-year-old, 6-year-old sister, because the stepfather may go into your sister's room. And if you tell people, and the 13-year-old kid, the dope guy says, I can make sure mom doesn't get her lights turned off if you do this for me. And crack comes in very easy math, 2s, 5s, 10s. You can't buy $3.62 worth. So they make it easy for them to think that they're taking care of their families. We've got to continue to make sure that there's another database out there that's putting our kids in situations. So the recommendations that we have, read them. See how much you can be effective at. You don't have to be in child welfare to be effective with children. You don't have to be in juvenile justice to make sure that the justice for these children is fair. So as a private agency, and we say private from the standpoint that that's how it's set up, but we're part of the public. I want to thank Lynn and Maribel for really being there, because they don't have to be, because they already are successful. I looked at her computer today and there's an image. She said, that's my 16-year-old child. Why is he more important than any other child? Because he's hers. And it's got to be important to me. So as you look at your images and as you look at these recommendations, know that this 3 years turns into 30 years, and we've got the brick, but we need you to build a house. So please look at that, understand that, reconcile with yourselves what you're going to do. The anger doesn't work, only the action. These recommendations are about taking actions on data that Paul and everyone else collected, but that was a lot of mouths in that room. And we all were A personalities, but through it all, which is one of my favorite songs, we made it through another day's journey. And we still here. Thank you.